So I think this is a moment that teaches us something profound, that by taking that more global, more cosmic point of view, we see ourselves much more as a part of a whole than just particles of dust in space.
This is Unplugged, a series of conversations with creative minds from the design industry and beyond, hosted by H&H.
Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of H&H Unplugged. We have the great pleasure today of being here with Mr. Daniel Libeskind in connection with us from New York. Hello Mr. Libeskind. Daniel, how are you doing?
Oh, how are you? Excellent. Happy to be with you.
Thank you very much. Look, Daniel, how are you going through this strange period of time in New York? All of us pretty much, we are out of the lockdown. Which was your first experience, your first thoughts after the lockdown when you stepped out again in New York?
Well, first of all, we are still in the lockdown in Lower Manhattan. Actually in Manhattan and in New York, we are in the lockdown, but I was able to go with my daughter and son-in-law and my little granddaughter upstate to their house in upstate New York. And wow, seeing trees, being able to smell flowers, seeing birds, the world is wonderful. Despite the setbacks, we live in a fantastic world. And my first experience was, it's so good to be alive. Whatever the adversities of humanity, the world is a beautiful world.
Did it give you the chance to see some details when you stepped out? As you said, the bird singing, the smell of the flower, some details that you never noticed before?
Well, I think the great detail is not a great detail. It's actually a great fact that the world once again appears to be sacred. You know, we get so used to, everything is available. We just step out, we step in, we just do what we do. But suddenly we realize that it's a miracle that we are here in the first place. And it's a miracle that there is a world. And that's something that I think is a longing of every human being who has been affected by this pandemic, that they suddenly realize, I should not take for granted this experience. This is something unique, and I underestimated what it means to be alive.
Look, there's a thing that I want to ask you, because I heard you saying in some interviews about something that I do agree very much, which is we do not grow as human beings by smooth changes, but we come across sometimes experiences that all of a sudden they make us change and they make us grow as human beings. Do you think that this is one of those moments?
I think there's no doubt that this is really one of the great moments in the history of human beings. It's a sudden transformation of everything we have dealt with. It is a moment of death and rebirth. It's a moment of a completely new sense of what the future is and what the past has been. So yes, it's that one of those sudden moments of transformation that no one can predict, that happen because reality itself is always unexpected. And that's actually what we are living through. The moment of the unexpected happening for us, with us, in us.
Those moments are for a good change, or could they take us backwards and change the humanity in a wrong way, taking the human being on the wrong side?
It's a great question, but that depends on us. That depends on all the human beings today in the world, how they will respond. How will they take what has happened? Will they take it into a negative path, into a backward path, or will they take it to a great future? I'm an optimist. I'm a believer that this is a moment of an amazing positive change. I think it's inevitable that this will be a positive moment. I don't believe that this will take us backwards. I think this will take us forwards. However many difficulties, we will learn something and we will become better for it. And there's no doubt in my mind that this is a positive change.
Thinking about positivity and putting that into an architectural perspective, I think that a moment of peace where there is no war gives us a chance to think about the future with a positive perspective. And therefore, even with architecture, into the architecture field, think about projecting our hopes. In moments of war, we have to focus ourselves only on the very present, just to stay alive. This is what kind happened in the last couple of months. What do you think as an architect is this moment for the architectural perspective of the future?
Well, you're right. It is a moment of turmoil. It's a moment of kind of a vortex of problems that have materialized around the world and in us and around us. But I think from the architecture point of view, or from the philosophical point of view, from the traditional point of view, you have to have a greater perspective. We talk about the instability in the world, but we underestimate the stability of the world. Look at the sun, look at the moon, look at the sky, look at the earth. These are not liable to the changes of headlines in the internet or the newspapers. We live in a pretty stable world. Of course, human events change, but let's take the longer perspective. The longer perspective tells us that humanity is faced at crossroads that test how humanity will respond. All religions, all philosophers have talked about it. We know it from thousands of years of human experience, which tells us that we can not be vanquished if we act in a moral way, if we act in an ethical way, if we act in a solidarity with humanity around the world, not just for our own egos. So I think this is a moment that teaches us something profound, that by taking that more global, more cosmic point of view, we see ourselves much more as a part of a whole than just, particles of dust in space.
I think that you have, as an architect, throughout your career, had to confront yourself many times to these subjects way before this COVID, because of even the type of projects that you did. Berlin, the Jewish museum in San Francisco that I visited, which is an amazing space.
Yeah.
Even though a tiny one, even tackled there in a tiny street, but it's meaningful. How much do you think that, and this is your job to sit down and think about what you're doing and elaborating a concept around it. It's not just merely putting together brick and mortars to build up something, but to create a concept. This is what I'm concerned about. How much do you think that the rest of the world, which is not you as an architect, as a person that by job has to think about, has to elaborate what happened in the world, to then transfer that into a subject, which is architecture in this case. How much do you think that the other people, the normal people, let's say, the average people in the world, would understand what is happening?
Very profound question that you have posed. I think we live generally in these secular societies, but what is missing is that sense of spirituality, because we are spiritual beings. We are not. It's not enough just to feed us and give us, bricks and mortar. We need more than that. We need to go beyond just our own limitations. So I think this moment reveals in our generalized global secular society the longing for the sacred. And I will make it very simple. When you walk out of the pandemic into the outside, you say, oh my God, look at the sky, look at the earth. It's not just a piece of chemistry and physics. It's something that goes beyond. And I think this desire to cross the threshold that is there always in our lives, because we do have spiritual spaces. We do, no matter who we are, all over the world. That, I think, will grow with this experience. People will start saying, it's been repressed in our societies, that space of encounter, space where I can not just be myself, but I'm with other people, a space where I can see the solidarity of the human strength and reflect it to something beyond who we are ourselves. So yes, I think this will lead, in my view, to a positive change. I think people will abandon this spiritual desert, a kind of, just the marketplace and exchange of, money and whatever, and will say there is more to life than that. There's meaning in life, and let's concentrate. Let's talk about it. Let's start building something that is meaningful, not just a facade.
I agree. We had a conversation with even other people of other industries, like manufacturers, and all of us, we agree that these only 2 months, 3 months of lockdown, they gave to everybody the feeling there are new values,
yes,
to be created. Even for the companies, even if you have a company and if you have to do marketing, you have to market your brand. Now the values that you have to connect to your brands, they are different, and they are very more human related.
Absolutely. I think people are realizing that, humanity is a risk. How do it's a risk. Nobody has guaranteed it. And where is the risk? We are vulnerable, but there is something other than that. And I think this could be a crossover where we move towards a different path, away from the materialistic sense of well-being, towards a healthier sense of ourselves in relationship to others, to build a society that has a greater solidarity, that cares about people all over the world. Because if you don't care about the other person, you yourself are diminished. And I think this is something that I think is, as you said, not something abstract, but companies, regular people on the streets feel this.
Very concrete, a very concrete. Yeah. Look, I want to ask you a very straightforward question about architecture that always amused me as looking at architectures, big buildings, and when do you know that a project, a design is complete, is finished? Okay, fine. Now it can go to site.
For me, the project is finished when the huge question mark has descended on it. Not when everything has been solved and you put it back into drawer and everything is on an automated control system. To me, a project is finished when the question that the project sought to grapple with is very clear in the project. So whether it's a museum, whether it's an affordable piece of housing, whether it's a city plan, that's when I realize, it now communicates. It can communicate something to other people. It's no longer just, within sort of a limited space. It becomes communicable to other people. And of course, it has to be communicated in the language of architecture, which is not with words. It's with light. It's with materials. It's with acoustics. It's with a sense of visceral experience, which is not just intellectual. But I think it has to sort of. I would say the project is finished when it speaks to the heart.
If I recall it right, you said once that the project is not the material that makes the project, but is the understanding of the experience that you have when you enter a project, when you enter a space. It's not that relevant, or let's say it makes the experience even. The kind of flooring that you put it down, the kind of walls, the kind of light, but it's just the whole. It's just the whole of the project and just the whole of the experience that makes it. Maybe this is the end point of it. When the whole works together, the lighting is perfect, when the material of the walls is perfect, when the flooring is perfect.
It is, but it's not really about material perfection. You know, the materials can be, you know, you maybe don't have the money to have the best materials. Maybe you're
Sure.
using, you know, maybe there's, but it's another kind of perfection. It's the perfection of the care that has been put into the project, which is not just a
Proportion,
care for things. Yes.
volume.
Volume, space, sense of light, sense of communication. It's really something that can touch another human being. And of course, architecture is the most materialistic profession because the material is so heavy, as opposed, let's say, to music, where you don't even see the material, just the vibration in the air. But
Yeah.
architecture also has that aura when it's true. When you go to great ancient buildings, great traditions of architecture in all parts of the world, you're affected by the aura, even though you might not know much about the history of this place. You sense that there is a care, and there is a sense that you are part of it. You're being addressed. You're being called. The stones are calling to you. I think that's when you realize that there is a meaning in architecture that isn't just in the physics.
Can I ask you one thing about that? Through my experience, correct me if I'm wrong, in the Anglo-Saxon world, it's very typical to divide the disciplines of architecture and interior design.
Yeah.
So much that on a specific building, many times, the architects designs the building, and then later on, without not even much connections with the architect, there is an interior design or interior decoration that goes into that. In Europe or in Italy, where I come from, that doesn't happen often. And for us, it's even kind of quite difficult to separate the two things. How do you see that? How do you feel that? Do you think, I mean, it's the right way of doing what is the relationship between the two things, the volume, the design?
Well, what you're speaking about is the fact that architecture is a cultural discipline. You know, there's a lot of science in it, a lot of scientific knowledge necessary, but ultimately it's a piece of culture, just like a poem, piece of music. A sense of tradition is transmitted in architecture as well. So it's inevitable that if you treat architecture as a cultural discipline, that doesn't have just an inside and an outside. It's a continuum. And so if it has the outside, it's like the skin of a human being, but there is also flesh, there's the soul, there's the heart. You can't just, yes. So, you know, an architecture with just skin would not really work. Just like human being, we would just skin. No, there's more to human being. There's more beyond the visible inside. So, and I think that's true for architecture. That's why we respond to architecture, great Italian architect, great architecture around the world. We understand that it has a depth, that it's not just one-dimensional, two-dimensional, three-dimensional. It's a multi-dimensional.
There is a personal question that I would like to ask you, because I'm a musician, and I know that as a hobby, and I know that you're a musician. Why music, where you were on a path of kind of doing that as a profession? So why architecture versus music in a certain moment of your life?
It's a great question. First of all, really, there is really no difference in my experience, you know, as a virtuoso, because music and architecture are almost the same. Look, a plan, a drawing is just a bunch of black piece of graphical things on a piece of paper, just like a score of a, Beethoven symphony. It's now, if you don't have the code, if you don't have the key, they remain just dots on a piece of paper with lines, in both disciplines. But if you have the key, you can open them up. You can see that they are not just what they seem to be. They can really be interactive. They can involve a performance of many people, hundreds of people in an orchestra, or thousands of people, in a city plan, and that they bring people together because they communicate something, one through sound, but architecture through not just sound, also through space, through light. They can communicate something beyond the obvious, beyond the prosaic, something spiritual, something cultural. So really, both the process of architecture and also the tradition, if you think about it, in ancient times, people already discovered that there is a correlation between the proportions of strings that are vibrating and proportions of architecture, of space, of geometry. And so the harmony of architecture and music is also the same. And most importantly, both music and architecture go directly to your heart, directly to your soul. They are not about just figuring things out in your brain. They affect you really instantly in a certain way. And I think that's why they are really a single field. And people have felt that there is architecture there.
There is no need for you to be an architect or a musician to understand or to feel, or to feel something from an environment, or to get an emotion from a piece of music.
That's right.
You don't have to be Mr. Libeskind or Mr. Steve Vai to understand a beautiful piece of music, a beautiful piece of architecture. And there is this correlation, which is very interesting to me, there. The classical theaters built up in 17th century and 18th century, they were shaped exactly as the inside of a violin.
Yeah,
because
that's right.
The resonance of the space was exactly the same of the resonance of the instrument. So there is actually a big correlation between music and architecture.
Very much so. And I think you said something very important, because you used the word emotion, that architecture and music cannot work just for the mind. They have to touch you. If they don't touch you, they're just abstract exercises, and they might look nice but if they don't touch you personally, they kind of evaporate. There's nothing there. So that's a very key moment, because what is in an emotion is also memory. And that memory that is possessed by people is part of their experience of the works of music and of architecture.
It is. Otherwise, they won't be even any space for innovation. And I don't want to be disrespectful, but architecture as what you do, or what, let's say, Zaha used to do at the very beginning, that was very even controversial. Even your architecture was very controversial at the beginning. I have in mind, again, the Jewish Museum in San Francisco. It was very controversial.
Yes.
If it was a matter of scholastic understanding of what is architecture and what it should be, it would never have been perceived as. Otherwise, the audience, no matter what, entering the building felt an emotion. And it worked. No matter it was right or wrong, the proportions, the meaning, the colors, the forms, is exactly the same thing with music.
That's right. And I think the buildings that we love, whether they are ancient or modern or still to come, are the buildings to kind of inspire us. There's something creative in them that is new, that is fresh, that is giving us adrenaline, that is giving us more sort of creative oxygen to grow. And I think, of course, I think almost every one of my projects, Zaha and other architects, was controversial. People said, are you crazy? This is impossible. This is not a building. But I think once you make that break and people can experience it over time, suddenly people realize that it's something really new and important for them.
Yeah. And you contribute even to set up another layer to the common culture.
Yes.
Can be different. You can do things in a different way, and they can be acceptable. They can be emotionally involving. They can be interesting. Absolutely.
Yes.
I know that you have not just a good relationship with your wife, but even a business relationship with your wife. how did it happen? Because the common sense is that working with your wife, working with who you live with every 24 hours a day, it's impossible, it's a mistake. Or how did it happen?
First of all, I have to say we just celebrated our 51st wedding anniversary.
Oh. Congratulations.
I thank you, but I tell you why. Because we are real opposites. Even on the astronomical chart, on the zodiac chart, we're exactly opposite the day, the hour, the minute. So we are really opposites, and opposites really do attract. And, you know, we are not, you know, just agreeing, you know, we have, it's a dynamic. And look, you can say love, you know, without love, you would, you know, with just a business partnership. And I know a lot of architects have business partners as their spouses. But I think what I enjoy is how lucky am I that we are, you know, we share values, we share the sense of laughter, we share what life is about. And I think that's really so lucky to have found a person like that, and for it not to have evaporated over time, but having gotten stronger and more passionate as time goes on. It's really a miracle. That's all I can say.
I'm sure that you also created some like specific boundaries, let's say, or roles in your professional life with your wife. Like, I don't know, I guess you are the creative one and she is the one more in charge of business relationship, business development. I'm just guessing. I'm sure that there are. Did it come naturally, or you sat down on the table one day years back and you said, okay, you know what, I will take care of the creative part, you take care of the business side?
Oh, no. I have to give you, if I have time, a little anecdote. When I first started working with Nina in Berlin, you know, I never had an office. It was just the two of us.
The museum, for the museum in Berlin, yeah.
So I was there, you know, with my drawing board with a pen and ink, and she was there. And I put my drawing up of the project, and I was looking at it, and she looked at it and said, "What is it?" I said, "Well, it's a great drawing. Can't you see a beautiful plan?" She said, "No, I don't see it. What are you talking about?" And, you know, she's not an architect. And I suddenly realized that I've been just talking to people who were just other architects. I never talked to somebody who was not an architect. And she really asked me questions. For the first time in my life, I was saying to myself, oh my God, what I think is right is not at all apparent to somebody who is a normal person, who is asking, why is this nice? Why do you think this is good? Why do you think this is good to build? And then I learned very quickly that I have a great partner because she's not an architect. She's approaching it from a totally different point of view. And that really taught me a lot about the fact that architecture is not just a private thing. And of course, she has abilities, many abilities which I don't have. So I was so lucky to have somebody who knows many things. You know, she has many experiences, many professional characteristics that I don't have. And so it's a very good collaboration, where I have to do certain things which I don't know what to do with.
We were saying before, no, that the architecture is not just a scholar thing. It has to be enjoyed by people who are not architects and they don't understand anything about architecture. Therefore, listening to their voices is absolutely relevant.
Absolutely, and that really gives you that dimension. Wow, I'm not doing this for other architects. I'm doing this for Berliners, for New Yorkers, for people from, you know, the city, communities. Yes.
We always like to end up our conversation with one question. What would be the advice that you would like to give to not the new, but the young yourself, Mr. Daniel Libeskind, if you would meet yourself today?
Wow, that's a great question. My advice would be really the same that I really followed, which is don't believe everything you've been told. Find out for yourself. Take a risk. Believe in something bigger than yourself. Believe something that is not just on the common highway of knowledge, but take a path that might be more vulnerable, a path which might even make you fail. But take that path, because on that path you'll discover something that is an adventure that you really could have never predicted when you started on the path. And that's true. For that and for now, I really do take the risks every day when I work as a creative architect. And, you know, I can tell you concretely, I entered a few competitions for affordable housing in New York Public Housing Agency. This is the lowest per square foot cost, and it's very hard laws. What do you do for New York City Housing Authority, public, you know, those buildings in Brooklyn, Bedford-Stuyvesant for the elderly, or in Long Island? And I won those competitions with a new idea that, yes, that's a challenge. I've never done it before. Let's do something amazing, always by the same idea. Start with a human being. Start with the dignity of the human heart and try to do it. And of course, that really expands your creative horizons. And yeah, that's really kind of what I would say to a younger self.
And if I may, find yourself an amazing partner as Nina.
Well, you have to be very lucky. You know, you can't buy this partnership. You can't buy the store. You have to, you know, look, we underestimate luck or fate or destiny or the gods or God or the divine. Call it by any name you want.
Yeah.
We need it. We need to encounter it, and we need to struggle to do it. And sometimes it's hard, and you never know when it will happen to you, because the spirit blows where it wants to. It's not in your control, and that's the beauty of life.
And then you have to make it work.
That's right, which takes a lot of discipline, a lot of hard work, a lot of sweat. It doesn't just happen by hope.
Exactly. So thank you very much, Daniel, for being with us. Thank you very much. It was a very interesting conversation, very inspiring, and very cheerful. And I hope to see you soon, maybe, since we both love Middle East. We are in Dubai, and we hope to see you soon, maybe here, for a dinner and a chat.
Thank you so much. Such a pleasure speaking with you. You're such a smart person. I would love to give you a hug and say hello. And I think this will happen in Dubai or New York or in Berlin or wherever we are in the world.
Indeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. All the best. Bye-bye.